morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And the sun is still rising in the sky, and some children are still sleeping in the house. So I'll try to make this work as best we can. I see we've got our coffee, Linda and others. I brought my Vine neighborhood mug along this morning. It was either that or the Sweetwater's donut mug. So, but my heart still lives in Vine, and it's my favorite neighborhood, even though I try not to pick favorites too often. So I'm going to kind of try to keep eyes on the camera, but I also am going to look around and see who's here. Alan, great to have you with us, and some of my friends, some of my regular coffee hour folks are here. It kind of warms my heart because well, we haven't done this in a while, and doing it this way obviously isn't as enjoyable as it would be if we were doing it in person. So we'll handle the technology as best we can. I hope that I won't get delayed or have blips in the system. My chief of staff, John Kern, is running the technology and the muting and all that good stuff. So if there's any issues, I'm going to blame John. No, I'm just kidding. And Sean Deverill is on my staff as well, and he's in Lansing, but quite frankly, we haven't honestly been in Lansing much since March, as I think many of you know, but it's been weird. We've run our whole operation really virtually since March, and it's been quite a time, as you can imagine, a time like no other. It's nothing we ever imagined signing up for. I signed up for tough budget negotiations and trying to find bipartisan solutions, but I don't think any of us ever saw this kind of a situation coming. So we'll go here for as long as we can. We'll give everybody a chance to chime in. I know that I got some questions in advance. So what I'd like to do, if it's all right with everybody, is give a quick overview of kind of what's been happening from the Lansing world, and then take some questions that were submitted in advance. I know we've got Lisanne and Jeff on, so it's great to have you here. Talk about the gravel bill a little bit, the aggregates bill a little bit, and then we'll get a chance to open it up here and handle anything that we haven't covered. So I'm not even sure everyone who sort of said they would be here would be on, but what I want to do is just, I'll give you a quick overview. As I said, you know, we've been kind of entirely consumed by COVID since March in most respects. Not only my office, but the entire legislature pretty much had to pivot to that and really only focus on that. And we've been handling constituent inquiries, unemployment, businesses being closed, everything that involved the fallout with the issue at the state level. We've pretty much had a full hands-on deck approach to that. So as you know, the system for unemployment wasn't working extremely well when the governor inherited it after 8 years of another administration, and then it was quickly and completely overwhelmed when Michigan was stopped essentially for the shutdown and for COVID, and we had you know, a 5-digit unemployment figure go to a 7-digit unemployment figure, over 1 million filings. And just to my staff's great credit, I just want to thank them. They've been trying to help people as best we can since that happened in March, and it's not been easy. The system was overwhelmed. We ended up appropriating additional millions of dollars to the unemployment insurance agency to help them hire more people. But we're still working through some of the cases that have been difficult or challenging. There's been fraud along the way. There's been people with all kinds of extenuating circumstances. There's been federal benefits involved, and it's been just extremely challenging. So one of the impacts of that, and Frank, I don't want to, I'll try to touch on your question now, but happy to discuss it more, is that a normal state budget situation that did commence in February and was about to really get fully underway in March and April also got put on the back burner. So we have a budget for our fiscal year that starts October 1st, that's due September 30th. And last year, the legislature had even passed a law that said we had to get the budget done by, I think is June 30th, which is typically the start of the fiscal year for a lot of our educational K through 12 institutions, and to help them be able to have some sense of what their budget was going to look like from state of Michigan funds. Well, that, as you may know, also was put on the back burner. We have a couple times a year what we call consensus revenue estimating conferences that the economists and the fiscal agencies try to predict how much tax revenue we're going to have. Those things were all upended because tax deadlines were pushed back 3 and 6 months in some cases. So we actually just Monday, the fiscal agencies and the economists held a special, rare, unscheduled, not planned in the usual course of the year, consensus revenue estimating conference. And this was because back in May, when this usually transpires, there was a projection of about a $3.4 billion deficit overall for the state, when you've got about 10 billion of discretionary funds to work with. So we were looking at a huge hole in May, but I can report to some happiness, not in a way that puts us back to where we were in February, but the numbers have improved. A lot of the federal stimulus dollars that came into Michigan and that we got out through our unemployment system and through stimulus dollars and other things have helped our revenue picture in the state of Michigan look better than we thought it would look in May, much better in fact. So where we're at now, if you want the hard numbers, is about, in the case of what we call the general fund, about $375-ish million projected shortfall that has to be filled for the year coming up starting October 1st. And then in the K through 12 school aid fund, actually is projected to have about a $382 million surplus, which is really good news for our schools and much better situation than we thought it would be in the spring. So what's going to happen, Frank and others, is that we're going to be returning to Lansing kind of in sort of earnest and as normal as we can be on September 1st. And I think we're going to have a very abbreviated budget making process to get it done by September 30th. And there may still be some things that can be done or some decisions that may have to get kicked down the road so that we can, sort of operate at a regular level. But I can tell you that things are not looking bad right now. Projections for out years are still bad. I see that, Commissioner Rogers is on the call with us and others. We're still going to need, I think, federal help to help us fill some of our gaps going forward. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of hazard pay, LISAN, and some of those issues as well. So a couple more things, and then I want to get your questions. I don't want to be the one talking all day here, but appreciate you being with us. K-12 schools, in terms of how they're going to operate and how they're going to return and how they're going to count their students and get their funds, was resolved by the legislature and the governor a couple weeks ago. Again, not certainly an ideal situation or solution, but the governor and the leaders of the House and the Senate put together a deal. Not everybody liked that deal. That tends to be the case that you get when you have a compromise. But I supported it, and in the end, both school labor groups and school administration groups were satisfied with the compromise we passed, and that's the Return to Learn package that the governor signed last week. And that gives our guidelines for things like attendance, seat hours, per pupil funding, counts, as well as assessments and standardized tests. So Other than that, I really just want to say, and I'll get to a few other things here, which is that there's been very little other legislative activity that hasn't been urgent or critical. And then bear in mind that this is normally a year, an election year, when the legislature is not as active in the fall. And that's the case here as well. We're scheduled to be in the Senate for about 6.5 more weeks before the election. So I do sense, for example, Lisanne and Jeff, that, you know, some bills like Senate Bill 431 and a counterpart in the House are starting to look like things may move, but we'll see. It may be sort of like a lame duck, a pre-lame duck kind of a pace, if you will, to try to get to the things that have all been backburnered. So that said, what I want to do, let me just see who else if anyone else has joined us that I hadn't noticed before. Whoops, sorry, my computer here. Nope, looks good. Let me just try to tackle a few of the questions that were sent in to me in advance. Lisanne, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your re-election to come. I think is going to happen in the fall here, but I know you weren't challenged in your primary, so look forward to working with you, and you do a great job, really great working with you. I know you had asked a few things, and so I'll just touch on them briefly, and then we can kind of go back around and see if there's more to talk about. But we had, oh, you know what, I know we're going to have, I don't know if Elizabeth came on the line from, yeah, you're there, Elizabeth. So I'll lead into you when we get a chance to talk about some of our water issues in Kalamazoo County. But let me just talk about Lisanne's questions real quick. We want to see if we can help on internet connectivity, Lisanne. I know that obviously it's become a much more prevalent issue than in the past, especially as we're trying to get kids connected to school virtually. And I know that I think you had explored some opportunities with some internet providers that probably weren't really interested at the time of being able to do much. I'm happy to work with you, and I'm on the Senate Energy and Technology Committee. And so the technology side is one where we've talked about rural internet and broadband access. And so let me see if we can reach out to Comcast and AT&T and even our local organization, which is CTS Telecom, and sort of see where they're at in terms of maybe being able to problem solve in this new COVID world we're in, where we need to have broadband and rural internet access for people that before maybe hadn't had the need for it. So I'm happy to commit to you to work on that. It's certainly a big problem. I know that Kalamazoo Public Schools on the other end of the wire is handing out laptops and you know, trying to help kids here in the inner city that aren't even able to connect from a technological standpoint necessarily, not even a Wi-Fi or an internet connection. But I'd be curious to see where we're at, and I'm happy to put those inquiries into the process if you're willing to let us work with you on that. So yeah, some grants have come through the legislature, both through the federal and state governments, but they're typically looking at situations where there's a need for economically disadvantaged people to be part of the population. And so we're gonna take a look at that for you. And I don't know, you'll have to tell me, come on in a minute here and tell me about Dish Network and if they're out there at all as well. Jeff and Lisanne asked about Senate Bill 431. This is a bill regarding aggregates and mining and regulations regarding mining in our local communities. And I'm happy to discuss that with you further. I can tell you that we've been watching this bill really closely. It does seem to be one of those bills that's going to maybe get legislative activity in the coming weeks here. So really keeping a close eye on it. It's still in committee, and there's a House version and a Senate version now. The Senate version is co-sponsored by Senator Barrett, a Republican, and Senator Ollier, a colleague in my Democratic caucus. So we could talk about that a little bit more. And last little thing on Lisanne's questions here is, the state and the federal government have done some things in terms of hazard pay and first responders, but you're right, at this point, it hasn't included doctors or nurses. And so that, as we look at future possibilities with either federal or state relief, is something that we can push for there. So, and then Frank, I think that I tried to sort of cover some of the issues. You wanted to know about the Capitol Commission and guns in the Capitol. Yeah, that's something that I really wish this commission would act on. They have kind of delayed and kicked the can down the road and sought legal advice and sought other legal advice and didn't listen to the Attorney General's opinion on this. And the commission is studying the issue. So I firmly think that there's no need for firearms to be in the Capitol, except with the sergeants that protect us. You can't have a sign in the Capitol, but you can have a firearm in the gallery. And one of my colleagues had a tweet that went viral and was seen by a lot of people, and I think did a good job of raising the consciousness on this issue. So I would encourage you, you can write to members of the Capitol Commission if you want. In fact, one of those members is a resident right here in our own community, and encourage them to take action on this, because I would sure appreciate it greatly. So let me see where we're at with that. And Elizabeth, I know you had said you wanted to talk a little bit about conservation districts. So let me turn the muting process over to John. And Elizabeth, do you want to start with a few minutes of your thoughts on conservation districts? And then what we'll do is we'll come back around. I want to hear from, well, let's see, you know what? I know Jeff Sorensen said that he had to jump off soon. So let me hear from Jeff and Lisanne really quick, and then we'll go to Elizabeth and Frank briefly, and then we'll see who else we can get in based on what kind of time you have available. So is that okay for everybody? I'm happy to be on and hear from you. So John, I think if you want to let Jeff and Lisanne come in, and we can do that if you're still with us.
Still with you, thank you. First off, I want to thank you for your office being involved on our Wednesday calls with Eagle. I think it's awesome that you are and that you're taking the interest in that. We have started our project of extending the water main into Cooper Township, and it is working out quite well. I mean, we've got some people that want it, some people that don't, but it's more overwhelmingly people that do want it. So it's working out really well, and the funding mechanism through the state, through the DWRF, through City of Kalamazoo and the urban cooperation that I'm sure Lisanne will attest to, that has just been tremendous between our 3 local units of government. A lot of people don't realize how well we do work together across lines, not only party lines, but parochial lines between our communities. So that's awesome. Second of all, as far as the broadband, I have several people that have been calling me that I would like to be part of your conversation with Lisanne as well on this. I've got a gentleman, I've also spoken to Charter, and they have something new that they've tried out in, I think somewhere in Virginia or South Carolina, that's some type of a hotspot that will extend their signal up to 30 miles, and I'm really looking to get more of a idea what that is all about. But one of the things that I'm going to do after speaking with Marilyn Passmore with Spectrum, she's the government liaison for our townships and municipalities, is to find out what areas of our community, and since that Richland and Cooper are side by side, and our north end of our township is very lightly served, going to try and figure out what our service area is, how many residents need to be done, and I actually there's a business in the area that might be willing to grant us some serious dollars to get that done. So I think with the three of us, or however many that would be on that, I think it would behoove us to look into this a little farther and a little harder, because there's a lot of people that one individual has two people at Michigan State. He works for Stryker. They all need the internet. They don't have internet. They've got dial-up, and and that's not only just one case. There's several dozens that are in that area, maybe even hundreds between two are both communities. So I'd like to be part of that. And as far as the gravel mining bill, I think we really need to I know that Judy Allen's been working with legislators in Lansing on this and knows our position on it. And definitely we can't give up that local control for such a major industry as the aggregate industry. So, but I hope that we can work together and come up to some type of a compromise on that works for everyone. So that's all I have, and I actually have to go to another meeting now, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you, and thanks for all you do for us. So,
Yeah, great to have you with us, Jeff, and appreciate that. I didn't touch on the PFAS topic yet, and I know you've got to go, but we've been kind of watching the water issues, throughout the community, not in terms of, not only Eagle and Crooked Lake and those lakes being so high, but also in terms of the Kalamazoo River and the drawdown there regarding the Morrow Dam. And then also, we've been trying to keep an eye on the PFAS situation.
absolutely.
As you know, the legislature wouldn't act on creating new PFAS limits, but the governor's administration was able to do that. We've picked up a couple more sites in Kalamazoo County that now meet the lower threshold for PFAS detection and adding to the monitoring list. But I know that, I don't know, have you had that meeting yet with Tetra Tech and Georgia Pacific, or is that still coming up?
That is coming up on, I believe, the 2nd.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So
And I plan
really
on
curious
attending
to
that
hear
virtually.
what comes out of that. And, John's been covering some of those calls for me lately, but I'm going to keep trying to get on when I can. So we're on
Absolutely.
top of it.
Do you have the link? Would you like that? I'd be happy to send it to you.
If they are willing to open it up to us, I will certainly see if we can be a part of it.
Yeah, I would talk to Nate, or I can email Nate and see. So,
Okay.
awesome. Thank you again.
Yeah, have a great morning. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Lisanne, do you want to add anything on there before we start getting around to other folks? We might have to unmute her. This is the Zoom world.
I wanted to thank, am I unmuted now? Can you hear me? Okay. I just wanted to thank John. Yesterday, he and I had a great conversation about a number of different topics, and I don't really want to take everybody else's time because John and I made great progress yesterday. So there's a couple more things that came up today that I want to circle back around with John on. So let's go ahead and turn it over to others because I want to make sure that their voices are heard.
Fantastic. All right. And then let's see, I think then we had Elizabeth come in and yep. Okay. You're unmuted, Elizabeth. So how's it going in the conservation district world?
Yeah. Thanks for hosting this today. So we've been open and working through this whole COVID time, providing essential support to farmers and landowners as they've been working as well. We've been able to keep up cost share, helping them out, environmental assistance and that kind of thing. Also, we have a grant which was just on pause like last week, so we're able to continue work out at the Gordonick State Game Area as well. So some of those things are coming back on that were paused, so that's great. And I'd just like to ask you for your continued support for the ag community, greenhouse, that kind of thing, as well as the environmental concerns. I think we've seen throughout this time too how important the environment is to so many people, as they've been able to get outside and it's really, I think, come to the forefront of how important it is to so many people. So I appreciate all of your support on those issues. You did mention some water issues, and so if you have some concerns and things, you'd like to float some ideas, that I'd like to hear those.
Great. And, like I said, we're, in terms of like funding and budget, we're going to be waiting here in the next couple of days and week, I think, to kind of get a sense of how things are going to move forward based on, the new estimates we've got. So there's obviously a lot of people who have a lot of concerns and interests in the budget. And we're going to hopefully do the best we can given the situation.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, Frank, Cody, how did we do with some of your questions and issues? And then Linda, I saw you had a question in the chat. Hang on, Frank. I'm still getting you unmuted there, my friend.
Yeah,
there we go.
there. I may have muted myself. Anyway, very good. You really did answer many of my questions. And I have a couple others, but not of, I'll wait to see at the end. They're not all that, they're kind of occasional kinds of things, but not, the ones that I asked you answered fully. Thank you.
Okay, great. And it looks like we got a meeting figured out when the next meeting of the Michigan State Capitol Commission is. So let's see. Let's see. I know there's a way to raise your hands, but if others want to chime in at this point, I don't know, give us a thumbs up or a hand wave. So Linda, okay, I saw you first, and then we'll go to Commissioner Rogers right after that, okay? Thank you.
Hi. Thanks, Sean. I think I was wanting clarity about the meeting of the MSCC. It's usually second Mondays, isn't it? And they're hard to find. John sent me a link to where you can find them. I've written them before. So that's one thing is just there seems to be a lack of clarity about how to find them on the legislature website, and I wish they would be more forthcoming about that or something. But I just wanted to say I happened to be on the revenue estimating conference on Monday, and it was really, really good. And I would urge people to go to the House Fiscal Agency to look at some of the material that's there. And maybe they've got a recording of the presentations. But I guess being part of the Michigan Senior Advocates Council, I'd want to really keep before the legislature now the necessity for in-home services that are funded through ASA, and to keep those services as strong as possible, and at least hold the line and not cut them to fill a budget deficit, because there are a lot of people, older adults, who are at home and need those services, not just older adults, but people living with disabilities. So those are important. And also to keep in mind the My Choice waiver program that allows people to get services, even if they're not on Medicaid. That's a really important care option for people, and it's very critically important, sometimes only for short term, but it's necessary, and it keeps people out of nursing homes. And I think we want to be really careful about folks having to go into long-term care facilities when they could stay at home and perhaps be safer health-wise at this time. So I just wanted to urge that consideration, not to forget that.
I think that's a really great point. I mean, I think a lot of things obviously change through the lens of COVID, right? And not only, as you said, nursing home and dangers there. And Frank, I know you wrote us about that as well. But also, just, what services are going to be viewed as critical or not critical through this new dynamic we're in. I think we're going to have a very, compressed window to try to figure that out. And I obviously don't think that we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. I've lamented to John and others. And, in February, we were looking at a general fund budget and a school aid fund budget that had about a 1 to 3% room for growth, which actually translated into a lot of possibilities that were being on the table. And now, as I've heard Representative Hoadley say a couple times, we're digging in the couch for all the loose change that we can find, So that's
I think what we're saying in the aging community, however, is to do everything you can to hold the line.
Yeah.
The
Clearly.
other thing come up is there have been some studies recently that, the isolation factor in this pandemic has been especially harsh for older adults and others who are at home and can't get out very much at all anyway. And the regional area agencies on aging have instituted call programs, phone call programs, and connecting programs like that, using what dollars they have to make that a possibility for people so that they maybe don't feel so isolated, and they always have somebody checking up on them. So it's kind of a really important time to hold the line. That's our opinion, I guess, our meaning MSAC and the area agencies. But yeah, we appreciate the difficulty of the situation. I'm glad the hole is not quite as deep as it was before. We're not asking for new, we're just saying let's hold the line and make sure these folks are well cared for.
Well, thank you. And I think that, the timing is good to have you here on the call. And also, I think a takeaway obviously for you is that the window is really short. So to really sort of, I think, crank that advocacy up and lift your voices, right, as quickly as you can, as soon as sort of, even before budgets are shaped, because I think, even for me, it's good to put me in that mindset of, oh, hey, wait, we've got to, think of some different priorities here. So very good. I appreciate that a lot.
Do you have any sense of the scheduling of conversations? The information I have is that because it is so truncated, a lot of the conversation is just going on through the upper leadership and not necessarily bringing the various committees in on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true to a good and bad, situation. We don't have the benefit of a long window of time to do a lot, and the return to learn package and a couple other things were absolutely just sort of negotiated by leadership, and then here it is, and take it or leave it. So that may be what we see with the budgets. The upside of that, I think, has been that everybody's been a lot more willing to compromise and act in a crisis rather than dragging it out for a long time. So we have an appropriations meeting posted for Wednesday, I think, and that's, we don't have quite a sense yet. The way it tends to go is the governor lays out her budgets, and then the legislature lays out their budgets, and then they kind of spend a lot of time working back and forth and having hearings and things. It may very well be that those things get talked about at high levels and get handed down, and here act on this. So there's room to do things, I hope, and we'll get a sense of that, I think, when we get back on Wednesday. Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So then I had Commissioner Rogers, and does anyone want to go after her? Well, go ahead, Julie, and thanks for being with us today. Great to see
Sure.
you.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple things, I'm like a broken record. I'm always still down here advocating for counties. So as you go through the budget, please try to protect revenue sharing as best you can. We have a lot of concerns both for various projects we have in the pipeline in Kalamazoo County, as well as our public health department. So I've also been speaking tirelessly at the federal level. Like you said, I don't think we can cut our way out of this hole. I'm thrilled that it's half of what we thought it was going to be, but it's still a significant chunk of money that we're facing that deficit. So I continue to also advocate at that national level, because as I like to tell Fred Upton, if he can bail out Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, I think he can help state and local governments. So thank you for whatever you can do to help us on that local level.
Yeah, you're a person of many hats, and you wear them all well, and that's really good to hear. And like you say, we're it's a lot better look at it that we had this week, Monday, than we had in May. So hopefully that means, but that I think that appropriately, Chris Kolb, the governor's director of budget, kind of said, but the projections for further out years are really pretty scary too. And, we just have to sort of really take things as they come right now. So good, very good.
And then my second thing, I would be remiss if I didn't advocate for my family and the families that continue to struggle on Eagle and Crooked Lake. I know you mentioned that really quickly. And I think you're aware of this already, but again, just to highlight it, things were going very well. The pumping has been working very well. I was down at my parents' this past weekend, and you can actually finally see where their seawall is. That's still underwater, but there's several feet of grass coming up and the waters are receding. So it's been working really well. They were extremely disappointed to get the notification from Eagle that Eagle made the decision to cut the pumping rate by 50%. And they're frustrated because of the reasons cited. It'd be one thing, there's 25 some or more monitoring points along the way. And to be clear, they've said that no households and no families are being adversely affected. The reason for their decision for the 50% is because of stress to vegetation. And frankly, there's trees dying all over the place, and those trees were dying even before the pumping started. So I encourage them to work through, of course, Texas Township, their local municipality, to put a formal request in to relook at that decision. Because they are concerned as we go into fall and we may start having an uptick in rain again, that's going to make it go backwards for them.
Great. Yep. We keep really close tabs on the situation, and I think we'll see if I presume that Texas Township will copy my office on that, and we'll keep really close eye on it the whole way. Obviously, the pumping and the weather has helped a great deal, but as you say, rain is going to come back. And in the meantime, I know that they're working on a long-term fix as well. And we reached out to Assistant Drain Commissioner Jeff Van Bell shortly after the last stakeholders meeting last Thursday and said, hey, if he had mentioned that DNR might have an interest in that situation. And we said, hey, if we can help with DNR or Eagle at all with, anything there, we're happy to do that. And of course, in the short-term situation as well. So appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
And let's see, Frank, or I think you can come back on if you want, Frank.
Yeah.
Cody.
Just a couple of questions. You talked about the compromise on the K-12 schools, and happy, I think, that able to reach some kind of solution that went out to the districts. I've gotten the impression that, and I could be wrong on this, but that one of the things that some districts aren't happy about is the fact that and if I have this right, that there has to be a formal re-examination of plans on a monthly basis. And if that's the case, I know at least the Kalamazoo district seemed to have a plan in place for a year. I think Portage did too, although it seemed a little, they may not have. That seemed to have been looser. I'm thinking of the two districts I know something about, but I'm wondering if some of that feedback has gotten to you and whether there's going to be any movement on the state to maybe change something on that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think what you're referencing is that there's a requirement in the law that teachers have to have a validated or verified two-way connection with every student. I think it's once or twice a week, and then they have to. Well, no, I'm sorry, that's not what you're talking about. But I mean, the provision is that that gets checked on a monthly basis. What you're talking about is, yes, there is a requirement then that the local school districts all have a monthly meeting where they reevaluate or they discuss where they're at in terms of their implementation of their plans, which have to be, their plans had to be submitted to their ISDs in certain cases last week, or in some cases a few other places by October 1st. But the essence of that, Frank, was a compromise. The Republican leadership wanted to have even sort of greater check-ins. In fact, the deal started out as they wanted to require, as you may recall, in-person learning for all schools K through 5. And that was one of the pieces that got changed as part of the negotiations. And the law says that school districts have to have a once-a-month opportunity to evaluate where they're at, and that invites public input as well. And I think it's a tough balance here, right? Even as a parent myself of 2 kids that are in the K through 5 system, nothing would make me happier than to have them back in school full-time or partially. But also then we take into account, obviously, the safety issues and what happens when outbreaks are going to inevitably occur at school districts. So, what I've seen, at least in terms of like Portage Public Schools plan and Kalamazoo Public Schools plan, is, they have the ability to move up their plans if things go well. They're not talking about in person in Kalamazoo Public Schools until March. In terms of, and I think the hybrid would be after November. I actually did be like two days per week is the Kalamazoo hybrid model after November if things go well. So Portage, I think, is going to start off in person with a couple days a week, in building in person. And so I think everyone's kind of waiting to see how these are going to play out. And so I hope that monthly check-in does not become an opportunity for people to scream at each other, but becomes a chance to really sort of look at it and say, are things going better than expected or worse than expected, and what do the districts have to do to deal with that? So that was just sort of one of the many compromise points that came out of that legislative deal.
Question on a different front, and that is, and maybe if I read the paper more closely, I know the answer, but the $300 to an unemployment supplement, what's the status of that? Do you know, Sean?
Yeah, as best I can tell you, the federal government, President Trump, through an executive order, made available a $300 a week unemployment benefit, or a $400 a week unemployment benefit to states once the $600 a week CARES Act unemployment relief expired. I want to say at the end of last week or the week before. And so this is to try to fill the gap for the lack of a federal further CARES Act stimulus, which didn't come about through Congress. Now, bear in mind, my understanding of the executive order is it only lasts for 5 or 6 weeks. But the state of Michigan felt that we needed to take advantage of that, and the governor agreed to accept it. We don't have the funds available to add another $100, which was one of the options of the federal relief package. And I think that price tag was like, was it, maybe John can jump in here, 90 million a week or something. Yeah, so he's nodding his head. So, I mean, there was not money to do something further than that in the state's budget, as we've laid out kind of the whole state budget situation. So, I honestly think, this is, you try not to let the partisan stuff make you not take the deal that's in front of you. We're still about taking care of our citizens first and foremost at the end of the day. And so the choice was, lose that whole $600 a week federal benefit and go back down to just the state's benefit of $372 a week? Or do we want to keep another $300 a week going into folks' pocket that were out of jobs still, at least until Congress maybe reconvenes here in the fall and hopefully considers something more extensive in terms of relief and another, either stimulus or unemployment benefits and so forth. So we're going to be able to keep putting those dollars into pockets for a little bit longer, and hopefully that answers your question.
Was that ready to go now, do you think? That'll happen quickly? Or I got the impression there might be some bureaucratic problems in getting that going. I don't know if you know anything
Yeah, I
about it.
think it's going into effect this week. Go ahead, John.
Oh,
Yeah, I can jump in there. So the funds, as I understand it, are available to us, and UIA is still working on implementation of them. So they're not showing up in people's checks yet. That may still be a couple weeks, is
Yeah.
the last thing they told us.
okay. Thank you.
Soon, we hope.
That's it.
Yep.
All done.
Well, anyone else? For the good of the morning, for the good of the Zoom, for the good of the hour. I don't know if John would need to unmute you, if you'd need to wave your hand, or, but I don't want anyone to not have a chance to join in. Otherwise, we'll wrap up pretty soon here.
Yeah, anyone has the power to unmute themselves
Okay.
at any point here if you want to hop in.
Well, again, it's great to see you all. I wish I could see you in person. And a friend of mine, my colleague, Senator Brinks from Grand Rapids, tweeted the other day that she shook someone's hand by accident the other day and was feeling guilty about it. But I can tell you that the desire to see people and hug them and shake their hands is real, and it's been a really difficult situation. So please feel free to get in touch with us anytime. We'll keep an eye on the budget and the water and COVID, and if there's anything we can do for folks, we'll be right on it. So thank you so much, and have a great day. Thank you.